Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Was Hinata's Contract Demon Part 5 The End. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
It was intelligent of you to move our fight away from your friends. It's a bit comical actually, because intelligent doesn't seem to be a word that I would associate with you, Madara mused, standing about 20 feet away from Naruto. Even from outside, he could hear the frenzied gunshots inside of the mansion as the white humanoids continued to wreak havoc. Naruto growled, his body covered in a shroud of crimson that resembled translucent bubbles, similar of that to a boiling liquid. Three tails formed behind him, his canines sharpening and his nails growing into claws. His red eyes burned into Madara's, a devious smirk on his face. His body was hunched over in slight crouch, ready pounce upon his prey. Undeterred by Madara's insult, he chuckled to himself. You just made this whole thing 10 times more exciting. I'll try not to go too hard on you. Oh, how gracious of you to offer that, the older male retorted flatly. But that will not be necessary. If I were you, I'd be more concerned about what will happen to Hinata once we finish here. After I put you into the ground, that is. I'm not worried by that, Naruto scoffed. You're not going anywhere near her. Madara smirked. I won't kill her at first. I'll let her live long enough to watch everyone else die. And then I'll finish her off so slowly that she'll be begging me to kill her. She should have died that night, but unfortunately, I had hired some rather inept assailants. Naturally, I eliminated them due to their incompetence, but by then the plan had already been botched. So I'll complete the job myself in just a few moments. The blonde responded with an angered snarl and charged forward, directly in front of his target's face. A split second later, he slashed at Madara, ready to tear the man to shreds. However, to his surprise, Madara slipped just out of his reach, effectively evading the attack by countering with his own enhanced speed. Growling in annoyance, Naruto pounced at him again. His hand now balled into a tight fist as he prepared to drive it into his enemy's chest. You'll have to be quicker, Madara hissed confidently, again narrowly avoiding his attacker. Is this really all that you've got? I was hoping for a bit more of a challenge, he mocked condescendingly. Now infuriated further, Naruto's physical form changed once again. His body became enveloped in covering that differed between dark red and black, and his posture grew more animalistic. His tails had doubled and become more defined, as well as a long pair of fox-like ears on his head. His eyes glowed a deathly white, and his teeth had become substantially sharper. His loathsome gaze locked onto Madara and he uttered a low, warning growl. Impressive, the Uchiha murmured, unable to deny his opponent's terrifying power. Maybe this won't be so much of a disappointment. After he hadn't even finished his sentence before Naruto had suddenly pounced and slammed into him, brutally crushing him against a thick tree nearly 300 feet away. The speed and force of the attack had completely knocked the breath right out of Madara, and he felt a crack in his back and several of his ribs upon impact. With a bloodthirsty snarl, Naruto viciously slashed at his enemy, blood spilling in all directions as his claws sliced deeply into Madara's chest as he remained pinned against the tree. He continued to attack Madara in an almost crazed frenzy, aiming to kill him such a gruesome fashion. However, before he could slice into Madara's throat to sever his jugular vein, he found himself thrown back from the Uchiha by an unseen force. His body hit the side of the mansion, nearly causing it to collapse inward. Madara coughed, grimacing from the pain. His chest was torn up in an array of bloody scratches, though they were already in the process of healing. He looked at Naruto with a smug grin. As I said before, it won't be as simple. Naruto didn't wait for him to finish his sentence as he once again lunged forward with murderous intent. All he wanted to do was rip the bastard to shreds, savoring Madara's screams as his flesh was torn from his body. However, before he reached his intended target, Madara quickly retreated back and narrowly missed getting his throat violently torn out. I may not be a demon like you, but I have something up my sleeve to even the score, Madara exclaimed. He pulled out a knife, slashed it across his palm, then pressed his hand against the ground. He muttered a few words under his breath, well aware of Naruto charging towards him once again. Yet before the fox demon could reach him, the ground suddenly split into a fissure between them, separating them further. Naruto's eyes narrowed as the split grew wider, hissing as a massive figure began to ominously rise up from the ground. He restrained himself from mindlessly attacking it, wary of the new threat. All he could hear was the sound of Madara's manic laughter, as well as the grating noise of rocks scraping as the figure continued its ascension from underground. It took a lot of time, as well as hundreds of sacrifices, but I managed to summon a demon of my own. I acquired a new power of my own, but this will ensure that success will be mine. And don't worry about Hinata. I will take care of her while you deal with my little pet," Madara snickered. Once it had fully emerged, Naruto was able to see the demon before him. It stood several stories tall, its decaying, earthen-colored form resembling a Jido statue of some sort. Several spiky protrusions stuck out of its back, pointing dangerously in several directions. Its ankles were shackled with chains, and a black rod extended from its midsection that was similar to an umbilical cord. Bony-looking arms were crossed in front of its chest, its wrists secured together with more chains. The creature was biting down on a scroll, which was also secured by straps hanging from a large blindfold covering its eyes. "This is the vessel for the demon that I was able to summon. It doesn't appear very lively at the moment, but I assure you that you'll have your hands quite full once it rejuvenates a bit more," Madara remarked dismissively, his eyes closing. "It's been a pleasure, but I have some crucial business to attend to." With that he opened his eyes, revealing deep crimson irises with a black pinwheel-like marking. He then turned towards the mansion, leisurely taking his time to approach the damaged building. Naruto snarled at him, his rage increasing by the second. The bastard was going to go after Hinata. The decaying monstrosity before him would undoubtedly slow him down in his pursuit to reunite with Hinata. Madara was his target, but the demon would likely hold him up for longer than he'd want. The sooner he eliminated it, the better. The statue-like creature slowly began to raise its head, the chains around its wrists rattling while its arms moved. Deciding that there was no other choice, Naruto went ahead with his next plan. He concentrated his energy, allowing himself to reach his maximum potential within a matter of seconds. The 6 tails behind him grew into 9, and he felt his body surge with power, allowing him to make his final transformation. His animalistic form changed into that of a fox's, his body now covered in an orange-red fur. His size had increased substantially, standing just as tall as his grotesque opponent. He grinned wickedly, baring his razor-like teeth as his red eyes seared with rage. His pointed claws dug into the ground as he prepared to pounce, intent on ripping his enemy to shreds. The Jido statue raised its arms, viciously breaking them free of their chains a moment later. Although its eyes were hidden behind its blindfold, its attention was locked on the demonic fox. It emitted a warning screech, the sheer sound of it cracking the glass windows throughout the mansion. Refusing to wait another moment, Naruto charged forward. A fleeting thought of Hinata crossed through his mind just as he slammed into the demonic statue. EWWW. Ino feverishly shot at the white Zetsu in front of her, destroying its head in the process. "It almost touched me. They're everywhere," Tenten added, slashing another one's throat deep enough to nearly decapitate it. Hidden spun away from one of the Zetsus, bisecting it in half with his sickle while evading it. He smirked with satisfaction as both halves of the body toppled onto the ground. "That was beautiful, Hidden Senpai," Tobai chimed in. "Have you ever considered ballet?" The silver-haired male gawked at him with contempt. "Ballet? You're fucking kidding me, right? But you'd be so talented." Tobai gushed excitedly. "You're so graceful and—" "Just shut the fuck up," Hidden snapped, not wanting to hear it. "I'm not joining the fucking ballet. And if you suggest it again, I swear that you'll be the next one I cut in half." Deidara rolled his eyes. "Both of you shut up, This isn't the time or place for your crap." He threw an explosive through the doorway to blast away another oncoming group of Zetsus. Sai appeared visibly disturbed as he gazed around the room with disgust. So much white gunk. It was nauseating, and he wondered if he had any sort of cleaner in his arsenal that would eliminate such dastardly stains. If not, the next best solution was to probably just burn the place down and start fresh. Itachi quickly reloaded his pistol. "We should get out of this room before more of those things come in here." "But they're coming through the only door of this room," Sasuke pointed out with a hint of annoyance. "Or we could just go through the giant hole in the wall." Hidden deadpanned, gesturing towards said giant hole. The others blinked, then mumbled a unanimous "oh." They ran towards the destroyed wall, only to catch a glimpse of what was going on outside. "WW, what the hell are those?" Sekura squeaked, going pale in the face. Everyone else held similar expressions, each of them torn between confusion and horror. A monstrous fox was fighting with an equally terrifying statue of some sort. "Let's just go through the door," Kasama murmured, backing away from the scene. Nobody argued otherwise and headed in the opposite direction. Staving off a horde of white humanoid creatures was one thing. Getting involved in the battle right outside was not as favorable. They weren't ready to die quite yet. "Hinata-sama." Hinata stopped running at the sound of the familiar deep voice, turning her head to face Pain. The red-haired man was standing beside Konan, each of them armed with a sniper rifle. "Are you all right, Hinata-sama?" Konan inquired with concern. There were some white splatters on hers and Pain's clothing, indicating their encounters with those creatures. I'm fine, she answered dismissively. I was with the others a little while ago, but I haven't seen Sasori. Do you know if he is okay? Kane offered a brief nod. He is safely barricaded in his bedroom at the moment since he does not have the strength to fight those things. But he is triggering traps throughout the mansion from his room to help eliminate them. But it seems like no matter how many we destroy, more keep coming to take their places, Conan added. At this rate, it would probably be safer if we met with the others. I have to get to the roof as quickly as possible. Hinata responded, in a hurry to continue on her way. Be careful and watch out for each other. With that she sprinted off once again, leaving them dumbfounded. They were probably right, she should probably head back down. But for what? What would the point of that be? It was both her and Naruto's fight, and she was not about to let him do all the work. Sure, it would have been quicker to have simply gone outside through the ground floor, but it was also substantially more dangerous. The deafening thuds and crashes coming from outside only confirmed it. She was getting close. Her eyes locked onto the door at the very end of the long corridor, which would lead to a staircase that would bring her directly up to the roof of the mansion. Azetsu stumbled out in front of her, only for Hinata to blow his head off with a single bullet from her gun. She was too close to allow anyone or anything to stop her. With a sigh of relief, she quickly opened the door and hurried up the staircase, her heart pounding loudly in her chest. She was both exhilarated and terrified. Hinata continued to ascend the steps, her hand gripping the polished railing while her other held the gun with her finger positioned near the trigger. She saw the plain metal door that would lead her outside, feeling a slight wave of relief. Her fingers turned the cold knob, forcefully pushing the door open to be greeted by the cool night air. What was beyond the door, however, was not what it should have been. Instead, Hinata's heart skipped a beat as she registered the sight before her. One-chan, are you okay? One-chan. Hinata blinked, her blood running cold as her eyes scanned through Hanabi's bedroom. The brightly decorated walls, the messy, disorganized dresser, the plushy bed that was covered in an array of stuffed animals. A confused Hanabi sat on the edge of the bed, quirking an eyebrow in confusion. One-chan, hey, I'm talking to you, she added with a huff. With her breath caught in her throat, Hinata's eyes met with Sister's, unable to speak. Why was she in Hanabi's room? Better yet, why was Hanabi there in the first place? Hey, what's wrong with you? Hanabi asked, growing more impatient. You're starting to weird me out. She's not real. This isn't real. It can't be real. Hinata was trembling, desperately trying to convince herself that the sight before her wasn't actually there. She swayed, putting her hand against the door frame to steady herself. Her fingers felt the glossy coating that smoothed the wooden doorway. It wasn't the cold metal that it should have been. If this wasn't real, was it a dream? Or a nightmare? One-chan, Hanabi called out, standing up, her worried state. What's wrong with you? Hearing her younger sister's worried voice snapped her out of her mental battle, and Hinata managed to find her voice. Oh, sorry. I'm not feeling well. That wasn't untrue. In fact, she felt as though she was about to faint. Relaxing a bit, Hanabi crossed her arms in front of her chest. You look like you need to pass out for about 12 hours. Is father overworking you again? Father. The word sounded foreign to her for some reason. Almost unnatural. No, nothing like that. Hinata trailed off, unsure of what to say next. She wanted to turn and run away more than anything. However, no matter how much she willed them to, her legs refused to move. She wasn't even able to turn her head to look over her shoulder. Was she really in the doorway of Hanabi's bedroom, or was she actually in the entrance that accessed the rooftop? The fact that she couldn't turn to look terrified her ever more. Her breath was shaky, and her hand was too numb to feel the gun in its grip. Hanabi gazed at her with obvious concern. Are you sure you're all right? You look like you saw a ghost, she added with a nervous chuckle. Hinata's heart skipped another beat, her blood running cold. A ghost? Was that what she was seeing? Was Hanabi a ghost? An illusion? Perhaps there was a chance that she was real. A desperate part of Hinata wanted to believe the latter, though she knew that there was no way possible. Part of her wanted to run over to her sister and wrap her arms around her in a tight embrace. Still, she couldn't deny the eerie fact that something was certainly not right. Who are you? What? The younger girl frowned slightly. You know who I am. I'm your sister, she added flatly. Hinata met her gaze once again, though her eyes had turned cold and steely. Are you really? Because my only sister is dead. I'm not going to fall for any sick jokes. She managed to raise up her arm and point the gun in Hanabi's direction. No, Hanabi was dead. This person wasn't her sister. Whether she was an illusion, a ghost, or whatever the hell she was, it wasn't Hanabi. One-chan, what are you doing? Hanabi backed up, visibly terrified. Why do you have a gun? And why are you pointing it at me? I'm not your One-chan. You're not Hanabi, so stop pretending that you are, Hinata responded. Hanabi stared at her in disbelief. Are you really going to shoot me? Her voice cracked on the last two words, her lavender eyes filled with despair and betrayal. The indigo-haired girl stiffened, caught off guard by Hanabi's reaction. Was she going to shoot her? Better yet, could she shoot her? She'd convinced herself that she could, but now she felt herself hesitating once again. Hinata was stuck in her difficult position all over again. She was mentally screaming herself to just shoot the person in front of her and end it all. But her finger wouldn't budge to pull the trigger. I don't know what I did to make you mad, Hanabi tearfully remarked. But whatever I did, I'm really sorry. Please don't hurt me. One san. That was it. Hinata's arm limply fell to her side once again, unable to go through with it. She couldn't do it. Even if that person wasn't her sister, it looked like her. It sounded like her. It had her mannerisms. It was too much like the real Hanabi. With a sigh of defeat, she felt the last of her resistance crumble. This was all so draining, and at this point, she couldn't tell what was real or not real anymore. Madara smiled thinly as he watched Hinata from the shadows, hidden from her view. The young woman was standing alone on the rooftop of the mansion, a desolate expression on her face. He had trapped her into the mind game that he'd planned especially for her. It was obvious that she'd kill herself before forming an alliance with him, so there was no point in trying. However, he couldn't resist playing one last game with her before finishing her off. It would make this whole ordeal that much more satisfying. Even though she's not your sister, you can't shoot her, he quietly mocked with a sinister grin. Let's make things a bit more interesting. A family reunion should suffice. Naruto growled to himself, glowering at his opponent while he thought about his next move. Although slow-moving and unimpressive in strength, the demonic statue before him was tough and resilient. Despite attacking it with a combination of his claws, razor-like teeth and brute strength, his enemy remained unscathed. Its outer exterior was proving to be problematic, and Naruto realized that time was quickly slipping away. Madara was after Hinata, and he had made damn sure that nobody could get in his way. Conniving bastard. With a guttural groan, the Jito demon uncrossed its arms and heavily slammed its palms into the ground as its blindfold tore away from its face. Its body began to contort and twist into a grotesque bulb-like form as the protrusions on its back turned into a form that was reminiscent of a conch shell. Its arms had grown longer, as well as its claws. A single red eye took up most of its face, its wide mouth filled with rows of pointed teeth. It looked as though 10 tails had sprouted from its body, which was now covered in a series of dark veins that looked almost plant-like. You're even uglier than before, Naruto deadpanned as it let out a horrible shriek, still able to speak despite changing into his fox form. He glanced over towards the mansion, his eyes widening when he noticed Hinata standing alone on the roof. The young woman remained completely still, her hair and dress blowing gently in the wind as she silently stared forward. She wasn't looking in the direction of the fight, and seemed unaware that it was even happening. Instead, she looked as though she were in some sort of trance. What is she doing? Naruto wondered to himself, suspicious that he did not see Madara anywhere. However, his thoughts were cut short as the 10-tailed demon let out another shrill howl. Shut up. I didn't forget about you, 10 tails, he hissed. To Naruto's surprise, the 10 tails slashed one of its disgustingly long arms at the fox, its talons just barely missing Naruto. It hissed, attacking a second time, though its arm grew another few feet, this time hitting the giant fox. Naruto skidded backward on the ground, narrowing his eyes with rage. Before his enemy could strike him a second time, Naruto lunged forward and tackled the ugly creature, breaking a tree in half as he slammed the 10 tails against its trunk. He then sank his teeth into its body, which seemed softer and more fleshy compared to its more statuesque form. His canines dug into the squishy mass, causing the other demon to wail loud enough for the glass windows in the mansion to shatter. The 10 tails grabbed Naruto around the throat, attempting to strangle him and push him down to the ground. Refusing to budge, Naruto bit even harder, jerking his head to tear a chunk out of his enemy. Blood splattered all over the ground as he managed to tear the mouthful of flesh away from the creature's body. A wail louder than any of its previous sounds caused the ground to shake slightly as blood gushed from its wound, its distorted red eye locking onto Naruto. It whipped one of its tails at him, forcing the fox demon to back away. Going berserk, the 10 tails began to attack him with all of its tails, moving so fast that it was almost a blur. Naruto was hit by a series of quick pummels, the tails whipping into him mercilessly as he struggled to block them. You fucking. Naruto ducked down and spun sharply, hitting his enemy with one powerful movement as he used his own 9 tails to attack his target. Knocking his enemy off balance, he smashed into it a second time, sending it rolling backwards several hundred feet. Now that he had gotten it a safer distance away from the mansion, Naruto wouldn't have to hold back. He quickly glanced back at Hinata, whom had not moved from her spot. The fact that Madara was still nowhere in sight unsettled him even more. The bastard could be hiding anywhere. He had a feeling that Madara was responsible for the state that Hinata was in. Naruto snarled, intent on grinding Madara's bones into dust when he finally caught up to him. The 10 tails elongated both of its arms and attempted to wrap them around Naruto's body in order to lock him into a hold. However, the fox broke free and countered by grabbing one of the arms and using all of his strength to flip the demon over onto its back. A crater formed in the ground upon the demon's landing, sending a billow of dirt in every direction. Not allowing his opponent the chance to get up, Naruto grabbed hold of one of its arms and violently yanked it away from its body. He grinned sadistically as the 10 tails howled in pain, carelessly tossing the severed limb aside. This battle was almost too easy. I think it's about time that I finish this ugly fucker off once and for all, Naruto thought to himself. However, before he could make his next move, the 10 tails emitted an awful ear-shattering cry as its body began to twist and distort, a veil of darkness ominously surrounding it. Realizing what was going on, Naruto hurried to kill the beast before it changed again. He was too late, however, as a burst of energy sent him flying back just as the 10 tails morphed into its next form. What exactly did we see out there? Because I can't tell if that was real or if I'm just losing my freaking mind, Ino exclaimed, looking like she was about to faint. Well, if it's not real, then I guess that all of us are going mad, Sai replied nonchalantly. The blonde sweat dropped. How can you be so calm about it? The group had since rejoined with Pain and Conan, with Sasori still locked inside of his room. He had triggered nearly all of the traps that had been installed, effectively impaling, burning, and blowing up those white Zetsus. Despite that, the humanoid creatures continued to appear one after another, and the situation was beginning to seem hopeless. I'm out of ammunition, Sakura muttered with dismay when she heard the empty click of her gun. This is why I'm glad that I don't have to worry about fucking bullets. I can just slice these fuckers as many times as I want without having to deal with any reloading bullshit, Hidden remarked as he happily decapitated another Zetsu. Our best option would be to head towards the armory, Neji chimed in, realizing that he, too, was running low on bullets. The room is heavily built and we'll have more protection in there. We need to get there as quickly as possible. Itachi nodded in agreement. Where is this armory located? Unfortunately, it's on the other side of the mansion, Pain replied. Well, that figures, Sasuke muttered with an annoyed sigh. Ino looked around nervously, grabbing hold of Sai's arm. Then we'd better get moving before more of those creepy white things show up. But what about the traps that are supposedly set up throughout the mansion? Sasuke crossed his arms in front of his chest. Aren't we going to set them off? Sasori was careful when he implemented each of the traps, Conan explained, noticing that her gun was nearly empty as well. He is monitoring everything from behind the scenes. He'll deactivate them when he sees which way we're heading. However, in doing so, we will be responsible for taking down the enemies that we encounter. But will we reach it in time? Jugo questioned. I mean, most of us are almost out. Hidden smirked and held up his sickle. This thing doesn't need bullets. I'll clear a path if necessary. I have a few explosives left as well, if push comes to shove, Deidara added. Let's go then. We've already wasted precious time just by talking, Neji remarked, trying his hardest to ignore the thundering noises coming from outside. The ground shook, causing the damaged furniture and broken glass on the floor to rattle slightly. Those horrible shrieks were impossible to tune out, however, leaving an unsettled, ominous feeling. It was the worst sound that any of them had ever heard, effectively causing their blood to run cold. Is that Fox on our side? Tobai loudly asked out of nowhere, startling the rest of the group. Damn it, Tobai, Hidden snarled, ready to swing his weapon at the masked man. Don't fucking do that. Tobai scratched his head and laughed sheepishly. Sorry, Hidden senpai. What is he? Let's hope so, Neji responded calmly before turning. Now come on. You just keep getting more and more hideous, Naruto remarked with disgust as he glowered at his newly transformed opponent. The 10 tails had shaped back into a more humanoid shape with an emaciated appearance, now with elongated arms and legs. The neck had become twisted and its head had grown a single ear on the right side. Not only had its mouth moved to the left side of its head, but the previously pointed teeth had become straight and now bore a grin. A single triangular nostril appeared above its mouth. The sole crimson eye was directly centered in front, with 6 spikes formed at the top of its head. 2 more curved down the side of its face, 1 on each side, and another was below its ear. The conch shell growth on its back kept its shape and the tails had grown longer as well. Although its body appeared in an almost malnourished state, Naruto noticed that it was gradually increasing its muscle mass. The 10 tails' hands were planted on the ground, its body bulking up the longer it remained in that position. It was as if the demon was absorbing something to strengthen itself. Once Naruto realized what was going on, he leapt forward to attack the 10 tails in an attempt to stop the process. However, before he could land his attack, he was whipped by one of the many tails of his enemy, sending him back several hundred feet. Undeterred, the fox demon pounced a second time, this time evading the tails as they flung towards him in a barrage. Knowing that he would have to use more force than he had earlier, he unleashed a series of his own attacks, increasing his speed and brute force. This time he managed to successfully slam into the 10 tails into the ground and pin it down. He then proceeded to sink his teeth into its neck, intending to rip the monster's throat out. His teeth tore into the flesh easily enough, but before he had the chance to do anything else, he felt something wrap around his own neck. Naruto realized too late that it was actually 2 of his enemy's tails and felt as the 10 tails attempted to snap his neck. He bit down harder, refusing to let go of the other demon. 3 more tails found themselves around his neck, yet he still held on, now gnawing deeply into the 10 tails' throat. He violently continued to dig deeper into the creature's throat, feeling blood splatter all over him in the process. Just fucking die already. Naruto continued to brutalize the area, noticing just how much the 10 tails was thrashing on the ground. It wailed and writhed, using 4 more of its tails to wrap around the fox's neck. In addition to trying to snap Naruto's neck, it was also now trying to strangle him as well. It used its remaining tail to drive directly into Naruto's back, the end of it hardening into a point as it dug in. Distracted by the sharp pain, Naruto relinquished his hold on the 10 tails' throat, wrenching himself out of its grasp as he retreated back. Shit, the fox demon snarled, conscious of the blood running down his back. He quickly glanced back over at the mansion, noticing that Hinata still had not moved from her spot. But how much longer would she remain there? Madara was still nowhere in sight. The 10 tails hissed and clumsily dragged itself back up, then placed its hands down onto the ground once again. It remained still for a few seconds, absorbing something unseen once again, and Naruto could see the deep wound in its throat slowly closing up. He growled, narrowing his eyes as he contemplated his next move. Whatever that monster was absorbing, it was helping the healing process. If that was the case, he had to make sure that the 10 tails wouldn't have the time to recuperate. He would just have to continue fighting it head on. Mother and father are waiting to talk to you. What? In the blink of an eye, the scenery changed and Hinata found herself in her father's office, the very same room where the slaughter of her family had taken place. However, the room was tidy and pristine. It was clean of any reminder from that night. Hayashi was seated behind his desk, skimming through a stack of documents in front of him. Hinata's mother was browsing through one of the several bookshelves that lined the walls. Hanabi was sprawled across a lounge, playing with her cell phone. None of them seemed to notice Hinata as she gaped at them in horror. What's going on? Her words were barely audible, and she leaned up against the wall to steady herself. The door to the room was shut behind her, and she half-heartedly wondered if it had been locked as well. Seeing Hanabi had been enough to nearly send her into a complete breakdown. But the thought of possibly being locked in a room with her deceased family would surely complete that ordeal. Hayashi looked up from his work. Oh, Hinata, I didn't even hear you come in. Did you need something? She probably came to tell you that all work and no play makes Hinata a dull girl, Hinata quipped. Seriously, you need to let her out sometime and interact with real people. I didn't ask you, he responded with annoyance. And you act as though I'm keeping her in a prison. Hanabi snickered. No, your lectures are punishment enough. Hayashi glowered at her for a moment, but apparently found it pointless to respond to his daughter's childish remarks and turned his attention to Hinata. Instead of repeating his question, he simply waited for her to answer. No, Hinata mumbled, hugging herself. It seemed that her gun had disappeared along with her ability to decipher lies from reality. Her mother had remained quiet, but an amused smile was visible on her lips as she continued her search for a specific book. The clock on the wall seemed unusually noisy, its steady and meticulous ticking growing louder with each one. The clock read 3 o'clock, which Hinata realized was not the correct time. It was supposed somewhere between 9 and 10 at night. Then again, for all she knew, 3 was the correct time of the current scenario that Hinata had found herself in. Peering out the window from where she stood, she could see that it was clearly daytime. Are you feeling alright? Hayashi spoke up, gaining her attention once again. You don't look well. Hinata merely shook her head, finding it increasingly difficult just to speak. All she wanted was to break down and cry, and throw her arms around each and every one of them. Part of her just wanted to pretend that all of this was real, and that she actually was with her family once again. Another part of her, however, knew that it was simply just a beautiful lie. One-chan, Hanabi sighed with a hint of irritation. Why have you been acting so weird? Are you sick or something? One too many of father's lectures. That's enough out of you, Hayashi scoffed, rising from his seat. Why don't you go terrorize someone else for a few minutes? She smiled sweetly. Because it's more fun to annoy you instead. Clearly, he deadpanned, then once again focused on his older daughter. Hinata, come here. Hinata stiffened. Come here. She could barely speak, much less move. Not only that, but she wasn't sure if she should go to him. He wasn't real obviously, so what was actually there? And no, she mumbled, unable to meet his gaze. Her mother, finally retrieving the book she had been looking for, joined her husband next to his desk. Hinata, please come here where the light is better. You don't look well, she said softly, repeating her husband's words. I am fine. The indigo-haired girl responded a bit more firmly. Really? She's stuttering again, Hanabi pointed out teasingly, getting off the lounge and moving over towards her parents. You know that means she's lying. Or just really nervous. It was unsettling the way all three of them stood there, staring her down. The longer they held their gaze, the more uncomfortable Hinata grew. She broke out of her state of paralysis and whirled around to run out of the room. To her horror, the door was completely gone. Only a solid wall remained. The door is gone. The door is gone. Hinata, her mother spoke up, her tone sweet. Almost too sweet. Why don't you come here? Something inside Hinata told her not to spin around and face her family again. Once again, her body betrayed her and did exactly that. The room seemed substantially darker than it had been only seconds ago, but that was not the detail that had caught her attention. Her parents and sister were still by the desk, only now their features were deathly pale and somewhat skeletal. They were now dressed in pajamas, with patches of blood visible all over them. More blood trickled down their hands, only to drip from their fingers and onto the floor. They looked as though they had been riddled with several bullets, and it was impossible not to see the splashes of blood throughout the rest of the room. It was exactly just like that night. She was trapped in a room with her dead family. At that point, all Hinata could do was scream as the rest of her world came crashing down. She closed her eyes and covered her ears, falling to her knees as she desperately tried to block out what was in front of her. This isn't real. This isn't real. No matter how many times she inwardly yelled that, it didn't change the fact that she was still stuck in some kind of nightmare. Tears streamed down her face and her body shook as she let out an agonized sob. She couldn't do this anymore. She wanted to just stick the gun to her head and pull the trigger. However, the gun had disappeared from her possession, leaving her completely defenseless. I told you that she's acting weird, Hanabi remarked. Hinata, you are overreacting, her father added sternly. Stop at this instant. Her mother spoke up next. We're only trying to help you, Hinata. Please come here. No, stop talking to me. Just stop it. Hinata screamed as she finally looked back up at them. However, as soon as she met their gaze, she went completely silent. Their lavender eyes were now red, with 3 black markings within the irises. Their gaze seemed to penetrate her very soul and she felt her body go entirely numb. One-chan, come with us. We miss you, Hanabi said with an unsettling smile. Hinata shakily rose to a stand once again, her tears drying on her cheeks as the seconds passed. She couldn't speak, and it seemed that she was no longer in control of her own movements. Hinata, come here, her mother added, opening her arms in a welcoming hug. Unable to resist the demand, Hinata began to move towards them in a slow, trance-like state. They seemed further away than before, as if the room itself had stretched. Nevertheless, with each leisurely step that she took, her fear continued to increase. She had lost the ability to speak and was unable to display any physical emotion. All she could do was continue forward, trapped in the prison of her own body while her deceased family waited for her. Madara grinned as he watched Hinata slowly make her way along the roof of the mansion. She was under his control now and wasn't even aware of the events that were actually happening. This was much more entertaining than simply killing her quickly. Watching others suffer gave Madara a great deal of satisfaction, and this was truly savoring. He would end her torment the moment she made it to the edge of the roof, where the figment of her family would be waiting. Only then would he allow her to see what was actually going on before she fell to her death. Her friends were being kept busy inside, and that wretched fox demon was still stuck in his own battle. There was no one to save her. And once she was dead, he'd eliminate those lowly servants all at once while the 10 tails finished off the fox. It's over, my dear, he murmured, watching as the young woman continued walking towards her imminent death. I've won. Naruto grunted as a heavy tail slammed into his side, causing him to skid sideways from the force. That 10 tails was one resilient bastard, proving to be a more formidable opponent than Naruto had expected. Still, there was no way in hell he was about to let that monster win. Naruto opened his mouth and blasted a large, rotating black sphere directly at the 10 tails, hitting its chest. The sphere exploded, billowing dirt and smoke all around the towering monster upon impact. I don't fucking believe this, Naruto muttered to himself once the smoke had cleared. That was one of his more powerful attacks, yet it had hardly inflicted any damage on the demon. Not a good sign in his not so humble opinion. The 10 tails wailed angrily and suddenly dashed forward, lashing out all of its tails at once. Taking Naruto by surprise, it mercilessly whipped away at the enormous fox, using its brute strength to pummel Naruto. At the same time, it grabbed Naruto's throat with both hands, its talons digging in as it let out another horrible screech. Applying a crushing amount of pressure, it attempted to snap the fox's neck with a brutal jerk. Before it had the chance, however, Naruto blasted another sphere into its face, causing the monster to release its grip with a shrill cry. Naruto retreated back, panting heavily as he glowered at his enemy. He was way beyond the point of being pissed off and he prepared to pounce again in retaliation. Yet before he did, he caught movement in his peripheral vision and quickly redirected his attention. To his surprise, Hinata was slowly walking along the rooftop of the mansion. Even from his distance, he could see the calm, stoic expression on her face as she continued forward. What the hell was she doing? She seemed completely unaware to the ongoing battle between him and the 10 tails, her gaze never once shifting into his direction. Hinata, Naruto yelled. To his dismay, she did not react to his voice and kept walking. What was wrong? Why wasn't she responding to him? Madara, that fucking son of a bitch, he thought to himself, realizing that Madara was finally making a move. Was he intent on forcing Hinata to jump from rooftop? Panicking for Hinata's safety, Naruto attempted to charge towards her, only for his path to be blocked by the mammoth 10 tails. It swung one of its heavy tails into him in a swift movement, causing him to crash through one of the trees. Taking to opportunity, the 10 tails once again placed both of its palms against the ground, using its abilities to regenerate itself. Although its damage had been minor, the energy it absorbed enabled its body to surge with even more power than before. As Naruto struggled to get up, the 10 tails continued to accumulate more power from its unsuspecting targets. Sekiro was the first to fall to her knees, her energy seemingly disappearing in only a matter of seconds. Her body felt heavy and devoid of any strength, and her heart rate had increased rapidly. The dual guns fell from her hands in a clatter, and her breathing had grown more shallow. Sekiro, Ino attempted to aid her friend, only to feel her own body growing weak. She nearly stumbled, only to be caught by Sai. "Are you okay?" Sasuke asked, helping Sekiro to her feet as he wrapped an arm around her waist. "What's wrong?" The Pinkette gazed at him, then at the worried faces of the others. However, before she could explain, Deidara and Tenten collapsed onto their knees as they too dropped their weapons. "I'm so tired," all of a sudden Tenten mumbled, before falling onto her side listlessly. Tenten, Neji dropped down beside her and lifted her up. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Tenten, what the fuck is going on here?" Hidden loudly demanded. "What's wrong with all of you?" Tonen swayed for a moment, feeling pain quickly grab hold of her to keep her from falling as well. Tobai proceeded to simply fall forward and face plant onto the floor gracelessly, and both Kasama and Jugo slid to the floor as well. At that point everyone felt as though all of their energy had been drained away without any explanation at all. Within seconds, everyone was lying on the floor as the 10 tails extraction took its toll on their bodies. Their limbs became useless, their frenzied heartbeats gradually slowed down, and their minds slowly blurred with disorientation. "Shit," Hidden grunted, unable to keep hold of his sickle as he lay on the floor. "Why is this happening?" Sekiro murmured quietly as she stared up at the ceiling. Had they been poisoned by one of the airborne toxins that Sasori had installed as a defense mechanism? Of course, he wouldn't have released the toxins while they were still navigating their way through the mansion. Then what was it? "Damn it," Sasuke hissed, lying beside Sekiro with his arms still wrapped around her. He was angry at himself, furious that he was so helpless at the moment. He wanted to get him and Sekiro out of there, but there was no possible way for that now. Ino blinked slowly, her eyelids feeling heavier with each passing second. It was easier to keep them closed at this point, so she did just that. "Ino," Sai spoke up as he noticed his girlfriend began to drift off. "Ino," he'd meant to yell her name, though it came out as more of a labored whisper. He wanted to shake her awake, only to realize he was unable to even lift his arm. His body was completely immobile. Itachi attempted to sit up, collapsing back down a moment later. Now was certainly not an ideal time for this to be happening. If those white Zetsus showed up, there would be no way for them to defend themselves. "We were so close to the armory," Neji mumbled as he gazed longingly down the hall. "It's right down there. This sucks." Deidara lamented with exhausted effort. "So this is where it ends, huh? This fucking blows," Hidden complained as he fruitlessly attempted to grab hold of his sickle. Aw, god fucking damn it, he could barely raise his voice over a whisper, frustrating him further. He already felt like shit, and now he couldn't even swear his head off to vent. Tenten glanced over at Neji, her face in close proximity to his. What's going to happen now? He was quiet for a few seconds before responding with a forlorn, I don't know. At the same time he managed, barely, to grab hold of Tenten's hand and give it the lightest of squeezes. That had been the last of his energy to make any sort of movement. The brunette offered him a weak smile, as if accepting their fate. None of them had the strength to even sit up, much less defend themselves against the enemy. Even with Sasori operating from behind the scenes, their situation was relatively bleak. For all they knew, Sasori could have already been killed during the commotion. He was still on bed rest, so his current strength was rather dismal as well. The group lay scattered in the hall, each of them gradually slipping into unconsciousness as their life force continued to drain out of them. Hurry up, one-san, Hanabi jokingly complained. Before we're dead. Hinata wanted to throw up, deeply disturbed by the remark as she walked towards her family. The bloodstains on their pajamas seemed to have spread, and the closer she got to them, the more gaunt and deathly they appeared. It looked as though their skin had taken on a mildly rotted appearance, and their eyes were empty and soulless. When they smiled, blood leaked from the corners of their mouths and dribbled down. Hinata's stomach turned from the sight, silently screaming for her body to stop moving. She was only 30 feet away from them by now. Hinata picked up the pace a bit, high as she spoke up with a hint of annoyance. A large gaping hole was visible in his chest, and as he spoke, more blood pulsed from the wound. Even as she continued to approach them, her mind was a complete mess as panic thoughts raced through her mind. What was going to happen once she reached them? Were they going to kill her? She dreaded the answer. Stop moving. Tears silently streamed down her face as her legs continued to betray her. If her heart sped up any more, she feared that she'd suffer from a heart attack. However, given the situation, she'd probably welcome that outcome. 20 feet. Now we can finally be together again as a family. Her mother spoke up in her overly sweet voice, causing Hinata to cringe. Although her words were soft and calm, there was an ominous undertone to it that sent shivers down Hinata's spine. She smiled and tilted her head slightly, a noticeable gash on the side of her neck. Please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop, please stop. Hinata kept moving forward, the details of the room now entirely faded, leaving behind a barren stretch. She couldn't see anything surrounding them, or what lied beyond her awaiting family other than a shadowy darkness that threatened to consume her. 10 feet. Their bony fingers reached out towards her and their smiles widened into demented grins. 5 feet. Hinata. The familiar voice caused Hinata to stop suddenly, her eyes widening as she slowly recognized it. Was that Hinata? Naruto-kun. Hinata, come here, her family hissed impatiently, suddenly lumbering forward. In that instant, Hinata could feel the gun she'd previously had in her grip once again, and she wasted no time in making her next move. Instead of aiming it at her parents and sister, she quickly turned the gun on herself and pulled the trigger. Hinata. Naruto bellowed as he saw her collapse on the rooftop, only a few feet away from the edge. It looked as though she had been about to walk right off, but had been able to prevent it taking some extreme measures. The 10 tails let out an ear-shattering screech, reminding him that he still had his current obstacle to overcome. There was no time left. He would have no choice but to do something drastic, regardless of how reckless it was. Gathering up all of his energy into one concentrated surge, he felt his strength spike up and he charged full speed at his opponent. In less than a second, he had barreled the 10 tails over and pinned it to the ground, ignoring its shrieks as he held it down. He opened his mouth wide as another black sphere began to shape and grow, well aware of his enemy's spiky tails mercilessly stabbing into him repeatedly in a desperate attempt to get him off. Refusing to budge, Naruto accumulated the sphere until it could grow no further, even as he felt his own blood gushing down his body and matting his fur. He blasted it directly into the 10 tails' eye with such an devastating power that it shook the mansion and caused most of the surrounding trees to splinter and shatter. The 10 tails' horrible screams were cut off as its entire head exploded from the ferocity of the direct hit. Its tails withdrew from the various points it had stabbed Naruto's body, falling limp onto the ground. Panting heavily, Naruto stepped back and watched as the rest of the body began to disintegrate into a pile of dust before his eyes. He winced in pain, having accumulated substantial damage from his dangerous plan. As reckless as it had been, however, it had worked. Unfortunately, he had used up nearly all of his energy taking that monster down, and he felt himself reverting back to his human form. He coughed up a bit of blood, his regeneration abilities much slower as a result of the battle. Shit, he hissed, noticing that his clothes were quickly becoming soaked with his blood. He didn't have time to think about such things, though, and he quickly turned his attention back towards the rooftop. His eyes widened in horror when he realized that Madara had finally come out and shown himself. Hinata. When she opened her eyes, Hinata could see the starry night sky as she lay limply on the rooftop. She could vaguely feel warm blood spurting between her fingers as her hand covered her wound. Her breathing was rapid and heavy, and it took her several seconds to realize that she'd inadvertently shot herself in the same spot where her scar was. Had there been a reason for that, or was it simply a cruel twist of irony? Nonetheless, she'd successfully snapped out of the nightmarish illusion she had been trapped in. Wincing in pain, she slowly moved her head from one side to the other, attempting to check her surroundings. She couldn't find the strength to sit up, but from what she could see, her family was no longer in sight. With a sigh of relief, she relaxed slightly and closed her eyes. It's a little too soon to lower your guard, my dear. Just as Hinata's eyes snapped open, Madara's fingers were already wrapped her throat, lifting her up off the ground. Hinata cried out in pain, desperately clutching at her abdomen as the man held her up in the air. She used her other hand to feebly knock his arm away, quickly realizing that it was futile. Your friend was somehow able to defeat the demon that I had summoned, Madara mused, sounding strangely calm considering the outcome. I must admit that I am a little surprised that he managed to do so. He's more powerful than I anticipated. No matter, though. I just wanted to keep him and the others busy for the most part while I had my fun with you. By now your friends are most likely on the brink of death if they haven't died already, he added. And your demonic friend isn't in the greatest shape either. By the time he gets here, you'll already be dead anyway, he added, dropping her back down onto the hard rooftop. Hinata rolled onto her side in agony, both of her hands clamped over her gushing wound. She was aware of the problematic exit wound in her back, knowing that it wouldn't be long before she bled out. Just to make sure that no one can interrupt us in your last moments, I put up a barrier that nobody can enter. Not even your fox friend, Madara remarked smugly. At this point I'll admit that I probably can't finish him off on my own, so I'll be content on simply burning this mansion to the ground with everyone else inside. Hinata gazed at him with a melancholy disgust. What is wrong with you? It seemed like a simple enough question, but the answer itself was quite complex. I can understand why you'd want to eliminate competitors, she murmured. But how could you kill your own family? It wasn't nearly as difficult as you'd think, he responded with a smirk. I wasn't very fond of my family to begin with, but once I found out that I could acquire certain abilities by sacrificing those who were closest to me, it was like a second nature. Most of the people that were killed had nothing to do with much of anything other than reaching the necessary numbers. But the blood of my own relatives ensured that I could become something much more than the kind of the man I already was. In order to achieve our goals, we sometimes have to make sacrifices, and my family was the best option. It's because of that I am able to do the things I am capable of now. You summoned a demon, Hinata pointed out. Does that mean that you yourself have become one? Sadly, no. Although I had killed enough people and supplied enough blood to summon a demon, I myself could not turn into one, he lamented. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. The indigo-haired girl stared at him with disbelief. He truly was a disgusting, selfish monster who clearly only cared about himself. He may not have been able to turn into a demon, but he sure as hell resembled one. It's rather unfortunate that you will not be around to see how things turn out once I leave here, Madara added with a smirk. My demon is gone, but he was mainly used for this particular plan. If I kill enough people, I can summon him once again. I will stop at nothing to make sure my goals are achieved, and with my newfound abilities, there isn't anyone out there who can stop me. I'll dispose of your fox friend at a later time when I accumulate more power. Hinata heaved herself up into a sitting position, her eyes locking onto his. She applied pressure to her injury, though she was beginning to find it pointless. You're pathetic. Madara narrowed his eyes, the irises turning red. Is that what you think? What you did was sick and unforgivable. You sacrificed your own family for your personal gain and nothing more. Only the lowest types of vermin do such things, she remarked icily. You were so desperate for power that you ruined the lives of innocent people. You truly are the most pathetic man that I've ever had the displeasure of encountering. You have some nerve speaking to me in such a manner, considering that I'm not the one dying in a pool of my own blood, he sneered. But I'm not quite done with you yet. With that, he grabbed her by the neck once again and pulled her up into a standing position while she let out a cry of pain. He ripped the choker away and tossed it aside, exposing the marking that Naruto had left on her. Hinata struggled in his grasp, grabbing his wrists to try to wrench herself free. She attempted to kick him, too weakened to inflict any sort of damage. Madara snickered. Oh, so that demon marked you, I see. It makes sense how you're still alive, I suppose. He prevented you from dying last time, but he won't get the chance this time around. He wanted your soul so badly that he made it impossible for anyone else to take it from you by marking you. Interesting. Let me go. Hinata tried to pull away as she felt his fingertips directly against the marking. No, stop. With sadistic glee, Madara began to burn the area with his fingers for his own depraved amusement. Hinata screamed as her soft skin was seared, feeling as though it was being melted away. Naruto always came when her marking was exposed, but if there really was a barrier up, there was no way for him to reach her this time. She writhed and struggled, moving her bloody hands away from her wound to thrash at Madara. While her small fists battered into him repeatedly, Madara only laughed as he continued to burn her. It's no use, my dear, he spoke loudly over her screaming. Nothing you do can affect me. But if you want to put up a fight, I won't stop you. It won't be long before you join the rest of your family. One-san, Hanabi's voice eerily hissed in her ear. Come with me. Mother and father are waiting. Shut up. Hinata suddenly reached behind her head and pulled the pin that she'd been using to secure her hair in place. She'd chosen one with a substantially sharp point specifically for a last-ditch attack mechanism should she be in peril. She'd nearly forgotten about it. In a fit of anger and desperation, she stabbed it down deep into Madara's neck where it met his shoulder. Completely off guard, Madara dropped Hinata from his grasp and grabbed his neck with a pained yell. Cursing, he reached for the pin, his fingers slick with blood as he angrily yanked it out. Blood pulsated from his wound, immediately saturating his clothing. Hinata cupped the burned area of her own neck, tears in her eyes as she watched him with a hint of gleeful satisfaction. She knew she was about to die, but stabbing the bastard had been a nice little consolation prize. Enraged, Madara kicked her in the side for her troubles, the bleeding hole in his neck already closing up. Hinata cried out, feeling a crack in her rib cage from the blow. Groaning, she held her side as she tried to pull herself into a stand. Madara grabbed hold of her flowing hair and pulled it so that she was forced to look up at him, standing only inches away from the ledge of the rooftop. I'd honestly love to torment you for just a little longer, but I really don't have any more time to waste on the likes of you. Please send your family my regards. With that, he violently shoved her backwards with enough strength to knock the wind out of her as she began to fall. Hinata's eyes were wide with shock, feeling as though time had substantially slowed down. Her gaze was stuck on Madara, a cruel, almost boastful expression on his face. She couldn't breathe, much less make any sounds of distress. Instead, all she could do was accept her silent fate, despaired that she had failed everyone. Hinata, the barrier that Madara had created suddenly shattered and Naruto was right behind the Uchiha with a bluish, spinning sphere in each of his hands. Since he was no longer in his fox mode, Naruto couldn't fire the same black spheres that he'd used to destroy the 10 tails, but his human form still allowed him to use this slightly less powerful variation of its devastating counterpart. Just as Madara turned around to see what the commotion was, he barely had time to register what happened before his head was crushed between the two spheres. Naruto demolished his head completely with a hateful bloodlust. The man's blood splattered onto him. Madara may have gained a great power, but he wasn't immortal, and with his guard down, he had left himself in a fatally vulnerable position. Mid-fall, Hinata had been fortunate enough to witness the spectacular sight, finally feeling the weight lifting off of her shoulders. A soft, content smile formed on her pink lips. Naruto let Madara's headless body crumple into a bloody heap, his focus now on Hinata. Their eyes met for the briefest of moments before the indigo-haired girl plummeted, out of his line of vision. Hinata. Without a second thought, Naruto jumped off the roof after her. For the first time in weeks, Hinata finally felt some peace even as she fell. Her body felt lighter and free, as if nothing could weigh her down anymore. Watching Madara die before her eyes had been more than enough to release her from that hell that she desperately tried to both pursue and escape simultaneously. Her indigo hair billowed softly around her face, her lavender eyes gazing into the starry sky serenely for a brief moment before closing them. She felt no fear, instead ready to embrace the ending that she'd been waiting for, knowing that it was only a matter of seconds before it would be all over. Hinata. The young woman's eyes snapped open just as Naruto grabbed her. Their eyes met briefly, an arrogant smirk plastered on the demon's face. He landed on the ground in a crouch a moment later with Hinata safely gathered in his arms. The impact of the landing had cracked the pavement under his feet. Hinata gazed at the male, stunned. She didn't know what to say as she tearfully stared into his cerulean eyes. You're not allowed to die like that, he remarked sternly, though his smirk remained. Why, you're covered in blood, Hinata murmured worriedly, noticing his stained clothing. Naruto snorted and rose to his feet, carrying her away from the mansion. I'm fine. I just need a little more time to recover. Hinata relaxed a bit, her apprehension waning. I see, she mused tiredly, resting against his chest. Wait, are the others okay? She added, fear evident in her voice. They are alive, he replied nonchalantly. I didn't spend much time dealing with them because I had to get to you. But I did at least check to make sure they weren't dead. They should be waking up sometime in the near future. With a content sigh of relief, Hinata closed her eyes once again, weak from the blood loss. Her neck still seared painfully, and the wound in her abdomen was even more excruciating. Yet none of that seemed to matter to her, even as her blood dripped onto the ground as the demon carried her into the garden. Naruto brought her over to one of the benches that had managed to survive the battle and carefully laid her down on it. He knelt down on the ground beside the bench, brushing her hair off her forehead. His eyes widened when he noticed that the marking he'd left on her neck had been completely burned away. He leaned over her and ever so lightly touched the tender spot, causing her to wince in pain. However, he was even more shocked to learn that she had been shot in the same exact area of the previous gunshot wound. Was that merely a coincidence? Naruto said nothing as he pressed his hand against her injury to slow down the bleeding. Deep down, however, he knew that it was already too late. She'd lost too much blood, and although he had managed to save her last time, he did not have the ability to do it a second time. His heart clenched as he realized that dreaded fact. What are you waiting for? Hinata asked with mild confusion. We had a deal. She didn't understand what he was hesitating for. Surely he'd brought her to the garden to consume her soul, as agreed. Hinata-chan, he brushed a lock of hair out of her face, unsure of what to do. Part of him still wanted her soul, he couldn't deny that. Even now its sweetness seemed to call to him, almost seductively. It was ready for the taking. However, he wasn't ready to say goodbye to her just yet. Not now, after everything that they had gone through. For the first time since he could remember, his life finally felt as though it meant something. And without Hinata, there was truly nothing left for him in such an empty existence. Naruto-kun, the young woman quietly spoke up, flinching in pain again as she felt more blood seeping from her wounds. Droplets sprinkled down onto the ground below, staining it crimson. Time is running out. That last part had required more effort. Her head was growing hazy and she was aware of her heartbeat gradually becoming slower. She closed her eyes, her breathing labored as she continued to succumb to her injuries. The blonde male cursed under his breath, bitter tears stinging his eyes as he reached down to cup her face in his hands. He leaned down and pressed his lips against hers, his body shaking with a mixture of grief and anger. This wasn't supposed to happen. He should have been happy that he was about to take the soul that he'd obsessively craving for the past several weeks. It didn't feel right anymore. However, it was clear she was going to die regardless of if he chose to take it or not, and he was at a complete loss as to what he wanted to do. Thank you, Hinata whispered as they gently broke the kiss, gazing up at him lovingly. For everything, her eyes began to slowly close once again, her mind fading out of consciousness. Hinata. Naruto had no choice but to make his decision right then and there. A frenzied thought crossed his mind, and although he wasn't sure if it was even possible, there was nothing else that he could think of. He didn't have time to ponder on it and instead slipped his hand beneath her head and lifted her up slightly, lowering his lips to hers. Are you guys okay? Sesori had been able to leave his bedroom and stumbled across the unconscious group in the hallway after going downstairs to the main level. He nudged Tobai's masked face with his shoe, a stoic and slightly aloof expression on his face. Because he'd been on a higher floor than the others, his energy had not been depleted as harshly as theirs had. His arm was still in its sling, though the bandages wrapped around his arm had been reduced to a lighter wrapping. Ugh, I feel like I have a fucking hangover, Hidden grumbled, wincing as he grabbed hold of the side of his head. What the hell happened? Beats me. Deidara groaned, still sprawled on the floor with a dazed expression on his face. Everyone was slowly coming to their senses, though their first thoughts were confused and disoriented. The deafening noises from earlier had stopped, leaving the mansion completely silent. It was both comforting and slightly unsettling. What exactly had happened? The carpeted hallway was stained with a series of white, gooey puddles that seemed to be the only remains of the Zetsus. It looked as though that whatever Zetsus had tried to reach them during their helpless state had melted into the puddles. Whatever had been controlling them must have lost the ability to do so, reducing the white creatures into the mess. Are we dead? Tobai asked loudly. We must be, because this is hell, Sai deadpanned as he stared at the white goop that had ruined the floor. He imagined himself spraying the affected spots with cleaning chemicals, only to throw a match onto the lot and watch everything burn with a content smile on his face. My head hurts, Ino complained, curled up into a fetal position. Neji scanned the hallway, feeling uneasy. Were they finally safe? Sasori had apparently deemed it safe enough to venture outside of his bedroom, so he supposed that he could take it as a sign that there were no more present dangers. Sakura, are you okay? Sasuke gently helped her up into a sitting position. The pinkette turned red in the face, giving him a brief, awkward nod. I am fine. It looks as though the threat is gone. Pain spoke up as he gazed outside through one of the windows. Although the property had been left severely damaged, there was no sign of any impending disasters. So, are we finally out of the woods? Deidara asked with a tired sigh. Because I'm ready for a nap, But you were just sleeping, dumbass, Hidden muttered under his breath. We're not in the woods. We're in the mansion, Tobai pointed out gleefully. The exhausted blonde stared at him for a moment. You don't say. Yeah, I mean, unless Hinata-sama built a mansion in the middle of the woods, I'm pretty sure that we're not in the woods, the masked man remarked as if it was simple. Okay, enough of this already. What exactly is the deal with that Naruto guy? Sasuke demanded as he let go of Sakura. He was back on the defensive, and what he had witnessed earlier was still not sitting well with him. The fact that everyone else seemed oblivious to it only annoyed him even further. We all saw what he turned into, and that thing that he was fighting. He's like some kind of monster. So, Itachi retorted unexpectedly. Whatever he is, it was a good thing that he was here. It's likely we would have died without his assistance. You're joking, right? The younger male frowned. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if this whole thing happened because of him. No, this didn't happen because of him, Conan gently intercepted. If Madara was targeting both you and your brother, as well as Hinata-sama, then Naruto being here would not have made a difference. He would have tried to eliminate all three of you regardless. Us as well. As much as he hated to admit it, Sasuke couldn't deny that. They had all been pawns in Madara's sick little game. The man had always had a cruel, sadistic side that Sasuke had picked up on from an early age. He knew that his uncle was capable of such things, though he had pretended otherwise. So, what do you plan on doing now, then? Knowing that he's not exactly normal. Sakura shrugged slightly. What difference does that make at this point? I think it's safe to assume that he doesn't have any plans to kill us. He would have already if he really wanted to. I'm not worried about him. Sure, he's scary. Really scary, Ino squeaked as she sweat dropped. But honestly, we could use the extra security. I'm just going to pretend like I didn't see anything strange and carry on in my life of blissful ignorance. Sasori spoke up. I had an impressive view of the spectacle from my bedroom window. It was unbelievable to say the least. But he's qualified for the job, to say the least. While we were running around, you were watching a fucking epic fight from your bedroom window. Damn, talk about having it easy, Deidara complained. Hidden rolled his eyes. Quit complaining. We got to kill those stupid white fuckers, which is a hell of a lot more exciting than just watching. Zetsus, Tobai exclaimed. Sai fell to his knees. But the stains. Shut up about the stains. Hidden snapped. Neji cast a pitying glance in Sai's direction. I will take care of hiring a crew to clean this mess up. No, this is my domain. The young butler exclaimed, hugging the floor. Besides, how are we going to explain this to a cleaning company? Sasori asked. Say hi. A bunch of white creatures attacked the mansion and now their gooey remains need to be attended to. Kasama snickered. Don't forget out the damage outside, the giant hole in the wall, and the fact that all of your windows are probably shattered. Just explain that a giant fox and a Jito statue were having a war outside near the garden. Sakura sighed. Well, that settles it. We repair the damage ourselves and get it cleaned up. Starting tomorrow, Ino mumbled, slumped up against Sai. I'm done with life for the day. Too much weird, not enough ability to comprehend things. I'm sure that Hinata-sama won't mind, Deidara added, dozing off on the floor once again. Speaking of which, where are Naruto and Hinata anyway? Tenten wondered, her voice laced with concern. Screwing in the coat closet. Hidden quipped with a suggestive grin. No, Ino, Tenten, and Sakura snapped back. Tobai excitedly chimed in. Oh, maybe they're baking a cake. The house got attacked and you think that they're baking a damn cake. Deidara asked incredulously. Did you fall out of a tree house or something as a child? Like really, what the hell is wrong with you? The masked man laughed. Oh, funny how you mention that. There was this one time in Bible camp when. We don't need to hear any disturbing stories from you, Sai interjected. I don't have quite enough bleach to clean both the mansion and everyone's minds. You went to a fucking Bible camp. Hidden snorted with laughter. How is falling out a treehouse disturbing? Jugo quietly wondered aloud. Well, Tobai began again, only to be interrupted by both Hidden and Deidara. Just shut the fuck up, Tobai, Hidden growled threateningly. Deidara visibly shuddered. Yeah, I already heard this story once. I'd rather not relive the nightmare. That interesting, huh? Kisame commented with a smirk. No, just weird. Deidara replied, leaving it at that. Naruto pulled back slightly once he was finished, his breathing rapid and anxious. He gazed down at the young woman in his arms, whom remained unresponsive. Hinata, can you hear me? He gave her a light shake, then brushed some hair out of her face, looking for any signs of life in her. His finger clumsily found its way to her neck, where he attempted to find a pulse and avoid the burn mark that Madara had left. Her dress was saturated with blood, and the ground had become painted in vibrant red droplets. Hinata, the indigo-haired girl, displayed no reaction, laying completely still in the demon's hold. It looked as though she was simply sleeping peacefully, undeterred by the horror that had taken place only a short while ago. The pale moonlight subtly shone over her, slightly illuminating her delicate features. Naruto's desperate attempt to save her had failed, and he hugged her body tighter against his chest. Damn it, he choked out, shaking from with rage and grief. Fucking. It was then that Hinata suddenly let out a soft gasp and her eyes opened, stiffening in Naruto's arms. Disoriented, she gazed listlessly up at the sky, unaware of her wounds healing even as Naruto stared down at her in shock. The burn on her neck disappeared, leaving behind smooth, unmarked porcelain-like skin. The holes in her abdomen slowly repaired themselves, eliminating all traces of the injuries. Unlike before, not a single mark or scar had been left behind. Hinata, Naruto softly spoke up, worried about her silence and listlessness. Are you okay? Hinata blinked, the male's voice catching her attention as she gradually regained her senses. She looked away from the sky, now staring up at the blonde demon with surprise, seemingly confused. Naruto-kun, what happened? Instead of answering, Naruto grinned victoriously and crashed his lips against hers, taking her completely off guard. He held her against his chest, refusing to let go. Apparently his crazy idea had worked after all. Interesting. What's going on? She asked him, growing more puzzled. What happened? I thought you were supposed to take my soul. I did, he told her. There was no way around that, because you were just about dead anyway. But after I took it, I gave you something in return. Naruto smirked with a bit of arrogance. Hinata gazed up at him, still perplexed. What did you give me? Well, I guess you can say that I transferred a small amount of my demonic powers into your body, he explained. I didn't even know if it would work, but I had no other option. So, what does that mean, then? She inquired, trying to process what he had just said. I'm not a demon now, am I? I don't feel any different. Naruto shook his head briefly. No, not exactly. You don't have my abilities or anything, but I was able to sustain your life force. By consuming your soul and replacing it with some of my power, I was able to keep you from dying. As long as you have that in you, you can't get hurt or die as easily as you could before, unless I die for some reason. Or so I'm guessing. He added that last part nonchalantly, as if it wasn't a big deal. You did that for me. Hinata seemed genuinely shocked. She knew that he cared about her, but didn't realize just how deep his love for her had been. Evidently, it had been more than she ever could have imagined. I wasn't ready to lose you, he stated after a moment of hesitation. Without you, my life, well, it sucks without you. And I wasn't ready to end things with you so easily. I love you too much. This was weird for a demon to say, but it was undeniable that it was how he truly felt. Without Hinata, this world wasn't worth living in his opinion. And as weird as it was, it felt amazing at the same time. The young woman smiled warmly at him. I love you, too, Naruto-kun. She felt his lips against hers as he leaned down to kiss her, wrapping her arms around his neck in a tight embrace. She thought that she'd been ready to die, and to finally end the pain and suffering that she'd been afflicted with. However, knowing that she could continue to live on beside Naruto was more than she ever could have hoped for. Hey, Hinata, are you out here? A loud bellow from hidden rattled the peaceful setting. Hinata. Shut the fuck up. Naruto yelled back, annoyed that they had been interrupted. She's right here, you asshole. The fuck did you just say? The silver-haired man shouted back. I'll beat your fucking ass. The blonde snorted in contempt. Yeah, try me, you dick. I guarantee your ass will be underground in about 10 seconds if you don't shut the hell up. With the moment ruined, all Hinata could do was awkwardly listen as the two men continued to go off at each other. They really did remind her of bickering children sometimes. I'd like to apologize for my actions, Hinata said to Itachi and Sasuke once they'd gone back inside the damaged mansion. I was mistaken when I accused you of. Itachi held up a hand to silence her, offering a friendly smile. No need to. You were led to believe that because of Madara's actions. I know that you wouldn't have thought lightly of the situation regarding my brother and we were led to believe that your family was the cause of our problems. so at the end of the day, we were simply pitted against each other. So Madara is dead, right? Sasuke demanded, getting right to it. Actually dead this time around. I don't want to see him in another 6 months because you were too incompetent to finish the job correctly. Well, his body is still up on the roof if you want to see for yourself, Naruto snickered. I must warn you though, his head isn't quite all there. And who the hell are you calling incompetent, you bastard? The younger Uchiha shook his head with disgust. No, I suppose I'll take your word for it. I just want to make sure that he's gone for good. Seeing how he's your relative, legally you are allowed to take possession of his body and have it buried where you want it, Neji pointed out. Otherwise, we're simply going to burn it. Feel free to burn it, Itachi said passively. We have no need or desire to do anything honorable with such a despicable human being. Ino shrugged. I don't know, he didn't seem to be human to me. What kind of person can stop bullets like that? Well, whatever he was, we have no interest in his remains. Sasuke glanced over at Sakura. I have more important things that I'm concerned with, like scoring a date with Sakura, Tobai announced, much to Sasuke's chagrin. Shut up, the raven-haired male snapped, though he didn't deny the comment. Itachi smiled warmly at Hinata. Anyway, it's been quite an interesting night for all of us. I don't think we'll have much to worry about from this point on. If anything, I think this experience made us just a little closer and more trusting of one another. If you don't mind, Hinata, I'd like to discuss some business with you during the week. But for now, I think some well-needed rest is in order. Who has time for rest when there are messes to be cleaned? I will get this place clean again even if it kills me, Sai muttered as he pushed a cart full of various cleaners and chemicals past them. If all else fails, I will burn the place down and start fresh, he added as he pictured the same scenario of himself from earlier. Please don't burn the mansion down, Sai, Hinata requested. I will replace the rugs if necessary. Yeah, so don't set the place on fire, Naruto deadpanned. Ino laughed with a hint of embarrassment. I won't let him. But just in case, I'll supervise, she trailed off, following her frenzied boyfriend as he hurriedly sped off with the cart in pursuit of fighting the first of many stains. You should really just get some rest, Hinata tried to call after them, only for them to disappear around a corner and cause her to simply give up on the matter. Ino would drag Sai's butt to bed before long anyway. Itachi gave Hinata a brief hug, oblivious to Naruto's territorial glower as he stood behind the older Uchiha. Sasuke stood in close proximity to Sakura, neither of them sure of what to say. Sakura was vaguely aware of Tenten dozing off on the couch next to Neji. Her body slumped against his as he wrapped an arm around her. She wished that it was Sasuke and herself on that damn couch instead. So I was wondering if you'd maybe want to stop by tomorrow. Sasuke spoke up with an uncertainty in his voice. Sakura blushed a bit and tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. Yeah. That would be nice. I'm free whenever, so just let me know. She wanted to lean in and plant a soft kiss on his cheek, but thought better of it. Instead, she offered him a small wave and went to turn around. However, she felt her wrist being grabbed, and looked up just as Sasuke leaned down to kiss her quickly on his lips. The gesture greatly shocked her to very core, but she happily returned the affection nonetheless. Damn, everyone's getting laid, Hidden complained under his breath. I need to get out there and find myself some bitch to hook up with. Make sure to keep it classy, Deidara remarked sarcastically. Sasori smirked thinly. I don't think Hidden understand what classy means. Hey, fuck you, Hidden snapped indignantly. Do you think the others figured out what you are exactly? Hinata asked once she was alone in her bedroom with Naruto. Although I missed the entire thing, I heard that your fight was pretty intense. The destroyed property kind of made it even more obvious. If they did figure it out, none of them seemed to care enough to bring it up. Or maybe they're all hoping that they just hallucinated the scenario. Or they're too afraid to mention it. Either way, none of them made any attempt to say shit about it, he added nonchalantly. By the way, what exactly happened to you on the roof? Why were you looking as though you were about to commit suicide? Hinata sighed and sat down on the edge of her bed, clad in only a short, silky white nightgown. Madara was making me see things and forcing me to move without any free will. What kind of things did you see? He asked as he sat down beside her. He was dressed in a pair of black sweatpants, leaving his chiseled chest bare. Just some horrifying images that seemed realistic. But I was able to break free of it. It was because of you, she added with a light blush. I heard you calling for me, and I guess something clicked in my head. Naruto, noticing that she seemed embarrassed, decided to change the subject. Pain and Hidden removed that asshole's body and threw it in the furnace, and Sai nearly burned the roof off trying to sanitize it, Naruto recalled with a snicker. Hinata turned to face him, smiling somewhat sheepishly. So what happens now? Things didn't turn out as we had planned. Well, I kind of like this job, to be honest with you. And there's no reason why you shouldn't continue to run your company if you really think about it. You still have the rest of your life to go through, and I've already done anything that I could remotely give a damn about. I want to stay here with you and be by your side." Naruto wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. Hinata subtly peeked down at her cleavage, the low-cut neckline of her nightgown leaving minimal coverage. Some things never changed. Hinata's face turned a light shade of pink, but she slowly moved her face closer to his. However, just as she was about to kiss him, Naruto beat her to it by suddenly crashing his lips against hers. He held her tightly against his chest, one of his hands behind her head to keep her in place. Hinata kissed him back feverishly, a pleasured moan escaping her lips. After a few seconds, they broke the kiss and softened their holds on one another. Getting comfortable, the two cuddled on the bed, with Hinata's head resting against Naruto's shoulder. "So, now that Madara's gone, how should I celebrate this new chapter of my life? Or our life, I should say," Hinata murmured, still blushing. "Well, getting you drunk and convincing to you to have sex with me 20 times sounds like a fun way to celebrate," Naruto insinuated with a smirk. "Rejected." The blonde male chuckled. "Alright, how about you take a break from all of this company bullshit, and spend the day with me tomorrow, then? Just us?" Hinata smiled and snuggled against him. "Sounds good to me. I love you." Naruto grinned. "I love you too." He leaned down and kissed her softly. "While we're out, I have to stop by the store because Deidara ran out of stuff to make ramen and he's too damn lazy to go to the store himself. Sorry, but I need my ramen." "Of course you do."
So this was the end of this series. If you wanna watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, we weeb offline.